The night was cold, the kind of night where even the street dogs stayed hidden. The rain fell in thin silver lines, washing the dirt from the empty road. A lonely human man named Daniel walked home with tired steps. His coat was old, his shoes soaked, but he did not complain. He was used to hard days and silent nights. As he turned the corner near the market, his eyes caught something unusual. A small figure sat near a broken lamppost, curled up on the wet ground. The shape was too small to be an adult, too fragile to survive the cold. Daniel slowed down, his heart beating faster. He thought it might be a lost child, but when he came closer, he froze. It was not a human child. Her skin had a faint glow, pale and soft like moonlight. Her eyes were large, shining even in the rain. Her hair, long and tangled, looked almost silver under the streetlights. She wore no shoes, only a torn piece of cloth wrapped around her shoulders. Her hands shook as she tried to cover herself from the rain. Daniel stood still. His mind told him to walk away. Aliens were rare in this part of the city, and most humans feared trouble if they helped them. But something inside him did not let him move. The girl raised her head slowly, her lips trembling. She whispered in a weak voice, "Please." "Help." The sound of her voice cut through his hesitation. It was soft, broken, yet full of desperation. He bent down, removing his coat, and wrapped it around her small frame. The moment he touched her, she flinched. As if she expected to be hurt, Daniel spoke gently. "It's okay. I won't harm you." The girl's glowing eyes stared at him, searching for truth. Finally, she nodded, but she said nothing more. Daniel lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. As if she had not eaten for days, he felt her shiver against his chest, and he knew she could not survive the night outside. He carried her down the street, ignoring the strange looks of the few people still awake. A woman at a window whispered to her husband, "That fool has picked up an alien child. He will bring danger to his door." Daniel heard it, but he kept walking. He did not care what others thought at his small home. Daniel pushed the door open with his shoulder. The room smelled of old wood and faint smoke from the fireplace. He placed the girl on his worn-out sofa and hurried to light the fire. The flames cracked, spreading warmth into the room. He brought a blanket and wrapped her again. This time she did not resist. She pulled the cloth tighter around her as if afraid it might vanish. Daniel then brought bread and a bowl of warm soup from the kitchen. He placed it on the small table in front of her. "Eat," he said simply. The girl looked at the food with wide eyes. Her hands shook as she reached out. She took the bread, holding it as if it was the most precious thing in the universe. She ate slowly at first, then faster. Her hunger was clear. Daniel watched quietly. His heart grew heavy. Who was she? Why was she alone in the rain? Why did no one come looking for her? But he did not ask yet. He knew the fear in her eyes. He knew questions would only push her deeper into silence. When her stomach was full, the girl leaned back, her eyelids heavy. She tried to speak, but only a few words came out. "Thank you." Human. Then her head dropped to the side, and she fell asleep. Daniel sat there, staring at her small, glowing face. The firelight painted soft shadows across her features. She looked fragile, innocent, but there was something strange, something he could not understand. Her skin had a mark, faint and glowing, shaped like a crest or symbol. It was half hidden under the blanket, but Daniel saw it clearly before it faded into dim light. He leaned back in his chair, the sound of rain tapping on the window. His mind was restless. He knew trouble would follow. Aliens with strange marks did not simply appear on the streets without reason. He had a choice. He could take her to the authorities in the morning, or he could keep her safe. As he closed his eyes, he whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Outside, the rain washed the streets clean. But in the shadows of the alleys, two figures in dark cloaks moved silently. Their eyes scanned the roads, their steps careful. One of them stopped near the lamppost where the girl had been. He bent down, touching the wet ground. His hand closed into a fist. "She was here," he hissed. The other figure nodded. "She cannot be far. Find her before dawn." Inside the small house, Daniel slept in his chair, the alien girl breathing softly on the sofa. The fire burned low, unaware that danger was already searching for the lost child. And so, the strange encounter that began in the rain was only the beginning of something far greater, something that would change Daniel's life, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy forever. The fire glowed softly in the corner, its light chasing away the shadows. Daniel sat awake while the alien girl slept on his sofa. Her breathing was light and uneven. Like someone used to restless nights, he leaned forward, staring at the faint glowing mark on her arm. It looked like a symbol, something important. But he forced himself to look away. He had already seen too much. The rain outside stopped near dawn, and silence filled the room. Daniel stretched, his back aching from sleeping in the chair. When he looked at the sofa, the girl was already awake. Her big shining eyes were watching him carefully. Her silver hair, still damp, clung to her cheeks. She looked like she wanted to speak but was too afraid. "Good morning," Daniel said gently. His voice was calm, soft, like one speaks to a frightened animal. He stood and walked into the kitchen, returning with warm tea. He placed it on the table in front of her. "It's safe here. You don't need to fear," the girl blinked. Her lips trembling, she touched the cup with both hands. As if the warmth itself gave her comfort, she whispered one word: "Safe." As though she was testing if the word was real. Daniel nodded, but inside his heart he wasn't so sure. He had seen the two figures outside last night. Moving like hunters, they would not give up easily. As the morning light crept through the window, Daniel cooked eggs and bread. The smell filled the room. The girl's stomach growled loudly and she looked embarrassed. Daniel smiled. "Eat as much as you like. There's no need to hide your hunger here." This time she ate more slowly, carefully, as if remembering human manners between bites. Her eyes kept wandering around the small house. She touched the edges of the sofa, the wooden table, even the cracked wall. She looked at everything with wonder, as though it was all new to her. Daniel finally asked, "What's your name?" The girl froze. Her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes darkened with fear. She shook her head quickly, refusing to speak. "All right," Daniel said calmly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You don't need to tell me." "Not yet." The silence stretched for a moment, only broken by the fire. Then softly the girl whispered, "Arya." Her voice was so low that Daniel almost missed it. He repeated it gently. "Arya, that's a beautiful name." Her lips curved into the smallest smile, but it vanished quickly, as though she had remembered something painful. She lowered her head, clutching the blanket tighter. Daniel decided not to press her. Instead, he asked a different question. "Arya, where is your family?" The girl's shoulders stiffened, her glowing eyes filled with water. She did not answer, only tears slid down her cheeks. Silent and heavy, she turned her face away. Her silence was louder than any words. Daniel's chest ached at the sight. He reached for another blanket and tucked it gently around her. "It's all right, you don't have to tell me now. You're safe here." But outside the world was not safe. In the village, whispers spread quickly. Some neighbors gathered near the well, muttering about the human who had brought home an alien child. One man spat on the ground. "He'll bring the hunters to us." "Mark my words," another nodded. "It's best we stay away from him, or we'll all pay the price." By midday, Daniel decided to go out for supplies. He looked at Arya, who sat quietly by the fire. "I'll only be gone a short while. Don't open the door for anyone, do you understand?" Arya nodded slowly. Her glowing eyes followed him until the door shut. As soon as he left, the silence returned. She wrapped herself tighter in the blanket, staring at the flickering fire. For the first time in many nights, she felt warmth, but her heart was restless. She knew they would not stop searching. Meanwhile, Daniel walked through the muddy streets. His coat pulled tight, people stared at him but said nothing. He bought extra food and some medicine. He told himself it was just in case. But deep down he knew. He was preparing for something bigger, something dangerous. When he returned, he found Arya sitting near the window. Her small hand rested on the glass, tracing the raindrops as they slid down. She turned quickly when she heard him. Her face showing relief, Daniel smiled faintly. "See? I told you I came back." She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "Why?" "Why what?" Daniel asked, placing the supplies on the table. "What, help me?" Her voice cracked. Her eyes shone with something more than fear. It was confusion, maybe even hope. Daniel paused, his hands tightening around the bag. He thought of all the reasons he should not have helped. The danger, the whispers, the hunters. But when he looked at her, all he could say was, "Because you needed me and because—" "No one else did." Her eyes widened. and for a second he saw something hidden in them, something proud, something royal. But just as quickly, she lowered her gaze, covering her arm where the glowing mark rested beneath the blanket. Night began to fall again, and the house grew quiet. Daniel checked the locks twice, then sat in his chair. He could not shake the feeling of being watched. Outside in the darkness, two shadows moved once more. One of them whispered, "She's close." "I can feel it." Inside, Arya sat by the fire, whispering words in her alien tongue. The flames flickered strangely. As if answering her voice, Daniel noticed and frowned. But he said nothing. He only wondered, who was this girl really? And in that quiet moment, the answer was closer than he imagined. The fire burned low, sending soft shadows dancing across the walls. Daniel sat in his chair with heavy eyes, but he did not dare to sleep. The alien girl Arya rested on the sofa, her small body curled under the blanket. Her glowing eyes were closed, but her hands twitched as though fighting unseen dreams. Daniel leaned forward, listening to the storm outside. The wind howled, rattling the windows. He told himself he was only being cautious, but the truth was clear. He was afraid. Afraid of the hunters who moved through the streets, afraid of what he had seen, the glowing crest on Arya's arm. As the hours passed, Daniel's exhaustion grew stronger. At last his head dropped and his breathing slowed. The house fell into silence. That was when Arya opened her eyes. She sat up slowly, her glowing hair falling across her face. Her gaze shifted to Daniel, who slept deeply in the chair. For a moment she just watched him. Her lips parted and a faint whisper escaped. "Why do you protect me?" Her voice was so soft it barely touched the air. Then she closed her eyes and began to speak in her own language. The words were strange, filled with rhythm and power. The air in the room grew warmer. The flames in the fireplace bent toward her, glowing brighter. The faint crest on her arm pulsed with light, sending soft waves across her skin. Daniel stirred in his sleep, his brow furrowing as though he sensed the change. Arya stopped suddenly, pulling the blanket tightly over her arm. Her breathing quickened. She stared at Daniel with wide, frightened eyes, but Daniel did not wake. His head simply rolled to the side, lost in sleep. Arya pressed her knees to her chest, rocking slowly. She whispered again in her alien tongue, but this time her words were different, broken, sorrowful. "Mother, Father, forgive me." Tears slipped down her cheeks, glowing faintly in the dim firelight. Outside, footsteps echoed in the wet street. Heavy boots moving carefully, searching. A faint metallic hum filled the air. The hunters were near. One of them raised a strange device that flickered with green light. "She is close," the hunter growled. The signal grows stronger. Inside, Daniel woke suddenly. His eyes shot open, his hand reaching for the old rifle leaning against the wall. He held his breath, listening. At first he thought it was only the wind, but then he heard it. The faint sound of metal on stone. Measured steps outside his door. Arya's eyes widened. She clutched Daniel's sleeve, whispering, "They found me." Daniel's heart pounded. He moved quietly to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek through. Two figures in dark cloaks stood in the street, their faces hidden. One raised his head, glowing eyes scanning the houses for a moment. Daniel thought the hunter's gaze rested directly on his home. He dropped the curtain quickly, his breath sharp. "They're here for you," he whispered. His voice carried both fear and something else. Determination. Arya trembled. She wanted to run, to escape. But her small body was weak. She knew she could not outrun them. Instead, she whispered again in her alien tongue. Daniel did not understand the words, but the fire flared once more, stronger, brighter. The mark on her arm glowed under the blanket. Daniel stared at her, shock tightening his chest. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Arya met his gaze. Her lips parted, but she hesitated. Her whole body shook, torn between trust and fear. Finally, she whispered in broken human speech, "Not safe. If they catch me, you die too." Daniel clenched his jaw. His choice was already made. "Then they won't catch you," he said firmly. He checked his rifle, loading the last of his old bullets. His hands shook slightly, but his eyes were steady. Arya's glowing eyes filled with tears again. She had never seen a human so stubborn, so willing to risk everything for her. In her world, kindness was rare, loyalty even rarer. Yet here was a man, poor and alone, ready to fight against hunters who terrified even soldiers. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, stopping near the door. A heavy knock shook the wood. A deep voice called, "Open this door, human." We search for what is ours, refuse, and you will pay the price. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, then glanced at Arya. She stared back at him with wide, pleading eyes. He stepped closer to her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The hunters outside knocked again. Harder this time, the door rattled in its frame. Daniel raised his rifle, his breath steady. He knew he could not fight them head-on, but he also knew he would not surrender her. In the silence that followed, Arya's mark pulsed with light again. Brighter than before, Daniel noticed it, but before he could ask, she leaned close and whispered into his ear, Not ordinary, Daniel, I am—" Her voice cracked, unable to finish. Her fear was too strong, but Daniel already suspected. The glowing crest, the strange whispers. The hunters. She was not just a lost alien child. She was something more. Something valuable, something dangerous. The hunters outside gave one final warning. "Last chance, human, surrender her. Or we break the door." Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle. His heart thundered, his choice was sealed. Whatever secret Arya carried, whatever danger followed her, he would face it, he whispered to himself. Not tonight. The fire flickered violently. The air itself seemed to tremble, and in that moment, Daniel realized Arya's secret was only beginning to reveal itself. The pounding on the door shook the small house. Dust fell from the ceiling as the hunter's fists hammered against the wood. Daniel's hands tightened on the old rifle. His breath came slow and steady. Though his heart raced like a drum, Arya sat on the sofa, clutching the blanket to her chest, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The faint crest on her arm flickered under the cloth. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the door. His voice was firm, low. "Stay down. Don't move." The hunters outside shouted again. "Last warning, human. Open the door or we break it down." Daniel made his choice. He moved quickly to the back window, pulling it open. Cold night air rushed inside. He turned to Arya. "Come now." She shook her head, trembling. "They will catch us." "Not if we move fast," Daniel said, his voice carrying more certainty than he felt. He pulled her gently to her feet. She stumbled but clung to him. Together they slipped out the window into the dark alley. The moment their feet hit the ground, the door behind them cracked with a loud boom. The hunters had begun to force their way inside. Daniel pulled Arya's hand. "Run!" The alley was narrow, filled with trash and broken crates. Their footsteps splashed in puddles as they moved. Daniel led the way, his eyes darting around for a safe path behind them. The sound of the front door finally shattered. The hunters roared in anger, realizing their prey had escaped. "Find them," one growled. The metallic hum of their scanners filled the night. Daniel's lungs burned as they ran. Arya struggled to keep up, her small legs trembling with exhaustion, but she did not let go of his hand. Every time she stumbled, Daniel pulled her forward. Refusing to slow down, they turned a corner, racing toward the market square. The streets were empty at this late hour, only the sound of the storm echoing against the stone walls. Daniel spotted an old cart half covered with cloth. He pushed Arya under it and crouched beside her. His chest rose and fell quickly. The hunters' footsteps grew louder. Shadows stretched across the walls. Their glowing eyes scanned every corner. One of them raised the strange device again. The light flickered green, stronger now. "She's close," he hissed. Daniel held his breath, pulling Arya close. Her body trembled against him. He whispered in her ear, "Stay quiet, no matter what." The hunters passed by slowly, their cloaks brushing the wet ground. One stopped near the cart, sniffing the air like an animal. Daniel's finger tightened on the rifle trigger, sweat dripping down his forehead. If the hunter lifted the cloth, there would be no choice but to fire. But then, from across the square, a cat knocked over a metal can. The sound echoed loudly. Both hunters turned their heads sharply. Their voices hissed, "This way," and they moved off toward the noise. Their footsteps faded into the distance. Daniel exhaled slowly, his body trembling with relief. He looked at Arya, who stared at him with tears in her glowing eyes. "Why do you keep saving me?" she whispered. Her voice was soft, broken, but filled with something deeper, confusion. Daniel met her gaze. "Because I can't leave you." Not to them, her lips parted, as if she wanted to tell him more, but fear silenced her. She only nodded, wiping her tears. They crept out from under the cart and moved toward the edge of the village. Daniel knew they could not stay here anymore. His home was already lost. The hunters would tear it apart, searching for any trace. If the neighbors had doubted him before, now they would turn against him fully. As they moved through the empty streets, lights flickered in windows, curious eyes peeked out, but no one opened their doors. Daniel felt the weight of their silence. He knew the whispers would spread faster than fire. By morning, the entire village would know he had helped an alien. At the edge of the village, Daniel stopped, catching his breath. He looked at Arya. "We need to leave. Do you have anywhere safe to go?" Arya shook her head, her silver hair damp against her cheeks. "No, nowhere." Her voice cracked with pain. "They killed everyone. My home is gone." Daniel's stomach twisted. He did not ask for details, not yet, but he understood. This was not just a lost child. This was a hunted survivor. And whatever had destroyed her home was still after her. Thunder rolled above them, the storm returning. Daniel pulled his coat tighter around Arya, shielding her from the rain. "Then we'll find somewhere," he said, his voice steady. "But we can't stop now." The hunters' voices echoed faintly behind them, furious and sharp. "Find them." "They are close." Daniel gripped his rifle tighter and pulled Arya's hand once more. Together they stepped into the dark forest beyond the village. The trees loomed tall and wet, their branches whispering in the wind. Each step carried them farther from safety. Yet closer to something unknown, Arya clung to Daniel's arm, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows. Her small voice trembled. "They will never stop, Daniel. Never." He looked down at her, his face hard but calm. "Then neither will I." Behind them, the hunters entered the forest, their scanners glowing green. Their voices hissed through the night. "She belongs to us. The human will die with her." The chase had truly begun, and neither Daniel nor Arya knew how long they could run. But one thing was certain. This was no longer about chance, it was fate, pulling them deeper into a storm that would change everything. The forest was alive with sound. The wind hissed through the branches. The rain tapped against leaves, and every shadow seemed ready to move. Daniel pushed forward, guiding Arya through the thick undergrowth. His rifle hung across his shoulder, but his other hand never let go of hers. Behind them, the hunters followed. Their scanners pulsed green, flashing against the trees. The sound of their metallic boots echoed faintly. Steady and merciless, they would not stop. Daniel and Arya stumbled into a clearing where an old shack leaned against the roots of a giant tree. Its roof sagged, its door broken, but it offered shelter. Daniel pulled Arya inside and closed the broken wood behind them. He lit a small lantern. Its dim light filling the dark space, Arya sat on the floor, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her silver hair clung to her damp face. Her eyes glowed faintly in the light. But what caught Daniel's attention again was the mark on her arm. It was glowing stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat under her skin. Daniel crouched in front of her, his voice firm. "Arya, I need to know. Who are you really?" Arya's lips trembled, her eyes darted away, but she saw there was no more hiding. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. She whispered, I'm not just a girl, Daniel, I am." She hesitated, her voice breaking. "I am the daughter of a queen." Daniel froze. His chest tightened. He shook his head as if he had heard wrong. "A queen?" Arya nodded slowly, her small hand pulling aside the blanket to reveal the crest fully. It glowed brighter than ever, shaped like a crown with wings of fire. The light painted the shack walls in gold. "This mark. It is the royal seal of my bloodline. Only the true heirs carry it." Daniel stared in disbelief. He rubbed his face with one hand, trying to process what she had said. "You mean, you're a princess?" Her eyes filled with sorrow. "Yes, princess of Ilaria. But my kingdom has fallen. My guards betrayed me. My family. Gone." Her voice cracked, and she covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. Daniel's heart ached. He knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You're saying those hunters, they want you because of who you are." She nodded through her tears. "They were once ours, soldiers sworn to protect. But they sold themselves to enemies. Now they hunt me if they capture me. They will use me to claim the throne. They will turn my people into slaves." Daniel's mind spun. He was no soldier, no hero, just a simple man who had stumbled into a nightmare. Yet here was a child, royalty, sitting in his broken-down shack, trusting him, depending on him. Arya looked at him with desperate eyes. "You should leave me, Daniel. If they catch you with me, you will die. No one will save you. Daniel's jaw tightened. He leaned closer, his voice steady and hard. I didn't carry you out of the rain to hand you over now. You may be royalty, Arya, but right now you're a child who needs me. And I won't walk away. Her tears spilled faster. But for the first time, a small smile touched her lips. She whispered, Why are you so kind? Daniel shook his head. Maybe because kindness is all I have left. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the shack. The hunters had found them. The door splintered as a heavy boot slammed against it. Daniel jumped to his feet, raising his rifle, his heart hammered. The hunters' voices filled the air. You cannot hide, little princess. Your crown belongs to us, Arya gasped. Clinging to Daniel's arm, her eyes glowed with fear and fury. She whispered something in her alien tongue. The crest on her arm burned with light. The hunters staggered for a moment at the glow. But they pressed forward. Daniel fired his rifle, the shot echoing through the forest. One hunter fell back with a roar, the other charged inside. Daniel slammed the rifle butt into the hunter's chest. The impact sending sparks as metal met wood. Arya stood, her small frame trembling, but her crest blazed like fire. The light spread through the room. Shaking the walls, the hunter hesitated. Shielding his eyes, his voice hissed, The seal! She truly carries it, Daniel shouted over the noise. Arya, what are you doing? Her glowing eyes locked on him, filled with both fear and strength. Protecting us, she whispered. The mark released a wave of light. Blasting through the shack, the hunter was thrown back. Crashing into the trees outside, the forest shook with the force. Birds scattered into the night sky. Daniel shielded his eyes, his ears ringing. When the light faded, Arya collapsed to her knees. Weak and gasping, Daniel rushed to her side, pulling her into his arms. Easy, you're safe, he whispered. Though he wasn't sure if it was true, in the distance more voices echoed, more hunters approaching. The forest seemed to close in around them, but Daniel now knew the truth. This was no ordinary child. She was a princess, the last heir of a fallen throne, and every hunter, every enemy would come for her. He tightened his grip on her small hand, his voice steady despite the storm. Then let them come, I won't give you up. Not to anyone. Arya looked at him, her glowing eyes wide with shock. Her lips parted, whispering one word, protector. And in that dark forest with hunters closing in, Daniel realized his life had changed forever. The forest was no longer quiet. Shouts echoed through the trees. Glowing scanners flickered like fireflies, and the sound of heavy boots shook the wet ground. Daniel held Arya close, her small body weak after using her strange power. Her crest still glowed faintly, but her strength was nearly gone. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew they couldn't keep running forever. The hunters were too many, too well armed. Yet he also knew one thing. He would not surrender her, Arya, he whispered. Crouching in the shadows of the broken shack, Can you walk? Her glowing eyes looked at him, heavy with exhaustion. Yes, she whispered. Though her voice was weak, Daniel nodded. Pulling her gently to her feet, Stay behind me. No matter what, they slipped into the forest again, the rain dripping from the leaves above. Daniel's eyes scanned the trees. He knew these woods better than most hunters. He had worked here as a boy, cutting wood, setting traps. He prayed those old tricks might still help him tonight. The hunters' voices grew louder. This way. The princess cannot escape. Daniel gritted his teeth, leading Arya toward a narrow ravine. He found an old rope bridge still clinging between two cliffs. The wood planks were rotten, the ropes frayed. But it was their only chance. He guided Arya onto it. The bridge swang dangerously over the dark drop. Halfway across, the hunters appeared on the other side, their cloaks whipping in the wind, their glowing eyes fixed on the fugitives. Human, one shouted, his voice a growl. Hand her over and we may let you live. Daniel raised his rifle, his voice sharp. Come and take her, he fired. The bullet struck the wooden post behind the hunters, sending splinters flying. They roared in anger and charged onto the bridge. The ropes groaned under the weight. Run, Daniel shouted to Arya. She stumbled forward. Clutching the ropes, Daniel fired again, hitting one hunter in the shoulder. The bridge shook violently. Daniel cut one of the ropes with his hunting knife. The bridge tilted, wood snapping. The hunters cried out as they fell into the ravine below, their voices swallowed by the darkness. The remaining rope snapped just as Daniel reached the other side. He grabbed Arya and pulled her to safety. Both of them collapsed onto the wet ground, gasping for breath. Arya's glowing eyes looked at him in shock. You risked everything, she whispered. Daniel wiped the rain from his face. his voice steady. "I told you I won't give you up." But their victory was short. From the forest behind them came more footsteps. More hunters, faster, angrier. Their scanners lit the trees green. Searching, closing in, Daniel pulled Arya to her feet again. "We keep moving," he said firmly. They ran deeper into the forest, the mud slowing their steps. The night was alive with pursuit, every sound a reminder that they were hunted. At last, Daniel found an old hunting ground, wooden traps hidden among the trees. He quickly reset 2 snares, placing Arya behind a fallen log. "Stay here," he whispered.